What's up everyone, Razma here, back with another Set 5 item guide. This time we're going over the Recurve Bow. A quick disclaimer before I begin, the units I have listed here are not a definitive list, just an overall suggestion. There are plenty of 3-cost units that can utilize these items, as well as 1 and 2-cost item holders that would work perfectly well with these items. I plan to do a more comp-based best-in-slot item guide in a week or two, once we see how the meta starts to shape up. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. So we're starting off with a double Recurve Bow item in the that creates the Rapid Firecannon. It has 40 attack speed base because it has 20 from both bows into it, as well as the ability has 20 bonus attack speed built in, which gives you a 40% attack speed for the holder of the unit. The ability also increases attack range of the unit by 1 hex. So this no longer allows a ranged unit to shoot from across the map to one corner to the other, as well as melee units from going like mega range from like having double RFC or something. That's not going to happen anymore. It's just a flat 1 hex range increase. It also retains its ability that it makes it so your attacks can't miss, so somebody can't dodge it, they can't like blind you if there's a blind effect, nothing like that can happen. So if the 4-cost item holders, like viable units for it, is just going to be any of your AD carry type units. Aphelios and Draven are both really good with it. Jax loves this item. Mord's pretty good. KL, Teemo, they're all pretty good with it. You know, it's just a good like overall item where your unit doesn't have to walk as much because they're farther range. For the Shadow version of this item, it is called the Rapid Death Cannon, and the base stats in the Shadow one are actually only 20 attack speed. And that's because the Shadow version changes by increasing the attack speed to 40% bonus, which would be a 60% bonus total attack speed. But that extra attack speed is only active when there are no enemies within 2 hexes of the unit that's holding it. Which means this item will never be activated. The extra attack speed will never be activated on a melee unit. Do not place this on a melee unit. It will only work on a ranged unit, and even then, if the enemy plays any assassins, if the enemy has anything that get towards anywhere near that unit, they're going to lose that 40% bonus attack speed, and the Shadow version of this item is pretty much wasted. So in the end, I really don't think the Shadow version is that good. I don't think I think it's okay with these ranged units, but not that great of an item. So the major difference is it has the more attack speed, but less overall if the enemy was within 2 hexes. Not that great. So next we'll move on to the Giantslayer. I'm recording this video on Monday night, which they just dropped the patch notes for the final patch notes, and a slight change happened to Giantslayer. So I'll just begin with Giantslayer. Was made out of a Recurve Bow and a BF sword. Its stats are 10 AD and 10 attack speed. And the abilities, attacks, and abilities deal 10% more damage, increased to 80% if the target has more than 1750 max HP. So this was 70%, and this just got buffed to 80%. So overall, I don't feel like that's going to make too big of a difference. I feel like the item is still going to be a pretty niche item. If you know you're fighting a lot of 3-star units, if you know someone's built like a Warmogs or 2, is playing like a 4 Brawler comp or something, you know, you build this item and it will be the best damage item you can have. Otherwise, it probably won't be that viable still. But it works on literally any damage unit because it's attacks and abilities. So it makes the abilities do more damage for a spellcaster, and makes regular auto attacks do more damage for a like auto attack based champion such as Aphelios or Draven. Now, the Shadow version of the item is the Evil Giantslayer. Has the same base stats, 10 AD, 10 attack speed, but the ability is completely different. So, attacks and abilities deal 50% more damage base. That's just straight up, they do 50% more damage base. That's fantastic. If the target has less than 1100 max HP, the damage is decreased by 15% instead. So what this means is consistently higher damage in the mid and late game. But if you're hitting someone with under 1100 max HP, which is really only going to be another player's carry, and that's only if they're not like 2-starred or have like a caustic item on them, then you'll actually be doing 15% reduced damage. Overall, this was an item that also just got a buff. It was only 45%, now it's 50. I feel like Evil Giantslayer is actually going to be a really, really powerful item. You just don't want to slam it right in the early game, because in the early game, not many units have over 1100 max HP, and then you'll actually be hurting your own unit, because you will be doing less damage. But in the mid stages of the game, destroying tanks, and the late stages, just killing pretty much everything, I think that's going to be a very, very good carry item. Alright, moving on to Titan's Resolve, which is from a Recurve Bow and a Chain Vest. You get 10 attack speed and 20 armor out of it, and the ability is slightly different from set 4, but still works pretty much the same way. When taking damage or dealing a critical hit, the wearer gains 2 AD and 2 AP, stacking up to 25 times, which means a max of 50 AD and 50 AP. When it's fully stacked, the wearer also gains 25 armor and 25 MR. So it's a little different by not just having like a percentage-based damage, but instead just giving flat AD and AP. It works well with Infinity Edge on like an AD carry type of unit or an AD unit, because they can stack it on crit and then gain themselves 50 extra AD in the end, which is actually pretty strong. It's also just viable on like any tanky unit, any backline unit with crit. I think Mord is probably one of the best users of this item. He lasts a very long time with his ability. He loves the scaling AP. His auto attacks are his main still like damage source with his ability, so the AD is really good. I think it's a great item on Mord. Otherwise, I really just think it's one of those items that, like, you know, it's pretty good, but it's probably not fantastic overall. The Titan's Revenge is the shadow version of the Titan's Resolve. It's actually a completely different item. It has the same base stats, 10 attack speed and 20 armor, but the ability is completely different. So every 3 seconds, the wearer's next attack deals 25% of the total damage the wearer has taken since the last empowered attack as true damage. That is a lot of words. What this means, though, pretty much is every time the unit takes damage, who's holding this item, they gain a stacking damage on their next hit. It can only proc once every 3 seconds, but stacking damage on the next hit that does true damage. It is very, very strong for like a very tanky unit that then you also want to give them some damage. You know, like a Rel, Mordekaiser, Eteric. It's very, very good on these units. Now, it states that the wearer's next attack deals 20% damage of the total damage the wearer has taken. But from my playtesting, it looks like it's actually not the total damage they take. It's the pre-mitigation damage, which actually means the item is a lot better than it even says. But that, I don't know if that's a glitch or it's the tooltip is wrong. I don't know which way it's supposed to be, but that's just from my playtesting what I've noticed. Pretty funny thing you can do is like this Titan's Revenge on a Leona 3-star is actually like insanely strong, because Leona 3-star is insanely hard to kill, and because it actually deals at a pre-mitigation damage, she gets like stacking 1000 damage like every 3rd auto attack, which is ridiculous. So moving on to the next item, we have the Runaan's Hurricane, which is the Recurve Bow and the Negatron Cloak. Guarantees 10 attack speed, 20 MR, and the ability is the same as it was in set 4 and 4.5, excuse me. Basic attacks fire a bolt at a nearby enemy, dealing 75% of the holder's AD as extra damage, and applying on-hit effects, and can critically strike. So pretty much, it gives your auto-attacking champions a second attack to hit a second unit that does 75% of their base damage. Pretty good overall item. Gives you some AoE. Works really well with the Deathblade to stack it faster because you're hitting 2 units. Very good overall. The 4 cost holders for this, I have Vayne on here just because Vayne is old Vayne. For those who don't know, every 3rd shot, Vayne does true damage on hit. So this ability this item literally doubles Vayne's damage. It's fantastic on Vayne. She's a 1 cost. I have her on there. But then it also works on Aphelios, Draven, Jax, Kale. It's pretty good on pretty much all of them. The shadow version of this item is called the Runaan's Untamed Hurricane, has 10 AS, 20 magic resistance, and the difference here is the basic attacks fire 2 bolts at nearby enemies. So you can actually hit 3 different enemies at once, but the bolts only deal 50% of AD as damage, not 75%. And they cannot apply on-hit effects, but they can critically strike. So not applying on-hit effects means do not use the Shadow version on something like Vayne. Something who all their damage comes from the on-hit effects, it's never good at that point. Because it doesn't apply on hit, it's terrible. Otherwise, it's still a relatively decent item. It doesn't have too bad of a negative besides that, like it doesn't hurt your own unit or something. So Philios, Draven, Jax, you pair this one with a Deathblade and it's pretty good because it can stack the Deathblade really fast. Next item is probably the most flexible carry item in the game right now in Guinsoo's Rageblade. It is built out of a Recurve Bow and an Elusive Large Rod. It has 10 attack speed, 10 AP, and the ability is the same as set 4, where attacks grant 6% stacking attack speed for the rest of combat. So it just gives you attack speed, every attack, boom, 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 scaling. For those that don't know, attack speed caps at 5 attacks a second per unit. So once you hit it, this item actually stops doing anything else, but getting to that point is very, very strong. The reason why I feel like this item is one of the most flexible carry items right now is a lot of fights are just front to back, get through the enemy tank line, and then kill their carries. And because of that, fights seem to last a very long time. So Guinsoo's has time to scale up and get you that full value out of the Guinsoo. Aphelios, Draven, Jax, Mord, even Vel'Koz, Heimerdinger, Kayle, Diana, Teemo, they all love this item. You can play AD or AP with it, and it works very, very well. The Shadow version of this item is called the Guinsoo Sacrificial Rageblade. It has the same stats, 10 AS and 10 AP, but the Shadow ability, instead of 6% stacking attack speed, grants 9% stacking attack speed, which is actually a 50% increase over the regular version, which is a lot. The negative that comes with this is attacks deal 2.5% of the wearer's max health to themselves as true damage every attack. What this means is you cannot use this item without pairing it with a healing item or a unit who can heal themselves. Meaning you need to pair it with a Bloodthirster, a Risk Thirster, a Gunblade if it's going on like a Vel'Koz or an AP champion. You can only use it with a source of healing. Same exact units can use this over the regular Guinsoo's. It'll just stack the attack speed faster. Going over to the Statikk Shiv now, which is a Recurve Bow and a Tear the Goddess. It has 10 AS, 15 mana, and the ability is a little different than how it was in set 4. Every third basic attack unleashes a chain of lightning that bounces to 4 enemies. Each enemy takes 70 magic damage and has their magic resist reduced by 70% for 5 seconds. So if you did play in set 4, you know that in the end they changed Shiv to give that MR shred, but the Shiv could crit and it had the crit to give it. Now that is not the case. Now it's a flat just 70 damage, which scales to 280 on the 4 people that you're hitting, and it always shreds the enemy's MR. Always shreds it by 70%. This is a very good overall item now. It's very good for streaking early game, and really good for late game MR shred. Normally you'd want to put this on like a secondary carrier support unit for the proc, not the main carry, because really you want to save like your main carry for better damage items. This is going to be for the magic resist proc most of the time. The Shadow version of the item is called the Statikk Stiletto, same stats, and the ability changes to every second basic attack. So every other attack unleashes the lightning that hits 4 enemies and deals the 70 magic damage to them. So a cap at 280 per proc. They have their magic resist reduced by 70% as well, so that shred is still there. The difference here is the holder of the item loses 33% of their attack damage. Honestly, for the use case of this item, that's not bad at all. You're going to be putting this on a secondary carry or like a support unit. You're not going to be putting it on your main carry. And then it does the lightning every other attack. That's every other attack is getting 280 base magic damage. That is very, very, very strong. And I would highly suggest utilizing this item in the early game, as well as then scaling it into the late game for just some MR shred. Alright, here is the Zz'Rot Portal. This is the item that this is the reason I had to remake this item guide, because I actually already have recorded this Recurve Bow video, and I have to re-record it because of this item. So, it's made out of a Recurve Bow and a Giant Spell, and it's the same as it was in set 4. At the start of combat, wearer taunts all enemies within 2 hexes. When the wearer dies, a void spawn that taunts again. They just heavily nerfed this on Monday night. Literally, right before I'm recording this item, the nerf was said to be coming out. They over-nerfed it. More specifically said, this item is probably over-nerfed. They're erring on the side of caution. The problem with it was it used to work with abomination units, and you could spawn double the amount of void spawns for having one void. For having 1 or 2 or 3. So if you had 3 Zz'Rot portals on 3 separate abomination units, then the abomination would spawn, and then 3 more abomination. When the abomination dies, 3 more void spawn would spawn. It was broken, and they completely nerfed it. They nerfed the stats of the Zz'Rot. They nerfed it so the abomination can no longer spawn it. This thing is probably dead in the ground right now. If you do end up making it, it is good on just regular tanks to give more survivability. You can put one in your backline if you need to like taunt an assassin away from your carry. But most of the time, I probably wouldn't build this right now. I haven't actually playtested it with the nerfs, so I can't say for certain. But just seeing the nerfs that did with it, I probably wouldn't use it. The shadow version of the other item is the unstable Zz'Rot Portal. And it's the same type of ability. At the start of combat, the wearer taunts all enemies within 2 hexes. When the wearer dies, a void spawn with a static 500 HP spawns and taunts again. When the void spawn dies, it deals 500 true damage to all enemies within 1 hex. This version of the item, I think, is still usable. Because of the 500 true damage bomb that the void spawn gives out when it dies, I think it's a viable item still. A thing to note with this item is you can throw it on an assassin. The assassin jumps to the enemy backline, taunts, dies, void spawn spawns, dies, and then blows up on the enemy carries, dealing 500 true damage, which means unmitigatable damage. That is actually extremely strong. So I think the Shadow Zz'Rot is still going to be viable, but the regular Zz'Rot, probably not so much. And then the final bow item for now is the Last Whisper, which is a Recurve Bow and a Sparring Glove. It grants 10 AS, 20 crit chance, and when the wearer crits, the target's armor is reduced by 75% for 5 seconds. Same ability it was in set 4, works fantastically well with Infinity Edge. Viable forecast holders are just physical damage-based carries, Aphelios, Draven, Darius. I think Jax is viable, but I don't think it's that good overall, because Jax kind of needs more like specific type of itemization. Good armor shredding thing. Someone's going ironclad, someone built a Shadow Bramble. You build this item to counter it. Now, the final Whisper is the Shadow version of this item. I think this item sucks. When the wearer crits, the target's armor and magic resist are reduced by 50% for 5 seconds. So lower armor shred, but also gives 50 magic shred. The wearer's armor and magic resist are permanently reduced by 25%. So whoever you have holding this item loses 25% armor and magic resist. That is a huge detriment to have on the wearer holding this item. And at the same point, you lose armor shred, which this is a more physical based item. You gain MR shred, but if you're gonna shred MR, Ionic Spark or Statikk Shiv, as we just saw, is gonna be a much better option. I don't think I would ever use the Final Whisper. Probably ever. And that is it for the bow items. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please give me a like, subscribe, and come see me live on Twitch. I'm live 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I explain all my plays, I answer everyone's questions, I focus on educational gameplay, and we just have an overall great time on stream. Thank you everyone for watching, and have a fantastic night.